yesterday.
very little.
So today was kind of makeup day.
Okay.
And it was gorgeous yesterday.
Space issues or.
I was stuck inside all day today, but I kept looking out. It's so sunny outside. Yeah.
Get it done. That's good.
Yeah.
Bust down a couple of
Learning
times,
to
but
live
not
with each
enough.
other.
Yeah, I didn't even take a break.
And how are you, Stacy?
I'm well, how are you?
So is that. I'm so glad she doesn't have to go.
I don't remember.
No, for a regular. Those are just always hard.
Oh, normally we don't do that.
We don't really do it. No. Have you, no, we
I feel like you're in front of
He's right been here long?
Obviously haven't made that much.
expect to know everything.
And I don't know that we did it last time. Dave may have.
I feel like we did last year. I think we did it last year. Yeah. So good to see you.
And lots of very minor corrections, just like a space here.
What you did was he didn't have an issue last year, but saw that.
And things like that.
This year issue,
Nothing major.
we have it twice a year, so.
I will send that to you, I just haven't, it's been really.
Probably not here when you do that, then.
That's not a bad idea.
You said it was twice a year, so I actually been to the airport.
As to whether.
I've been at the airport.
Last year, I thought that was like the training.
We have hangers that way.
No, but moving forward, I'll always be here twice a year.
Good.
No, it's, including the training one, that's 3.
Yeah, so it's-
Yeah, so there is one next week. So we'll get it presented today. We'll get it presented today and then, oh, in 2 weeks.
It is
That's still.
Really?
Well, then I made it.
Yeah, this
Make
one's
sure we
this one's
announce
important
that,
one, I mean.
because I told somebody the wrong information.
We've had baseball last year.
Yeah.
This baseball game, because the coaches take over, they're like, it's one thing to miss this, I have this up in front of me, I know the questions I can ask, it's not a big deal.
I don't think that's no question. 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks. I know why you wouldn't want to be on that.
Pretty sure that's what it is.
I had something.
I think one of these things when you're presenting, we should say the Piper's calling you.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Planning commission is important though. People.
And I think you could remotely
I always
come in
thought
if you
that.
want.
That's the thing, because I would
Yeah.
traveling, it's not that I wouldn't be available, it's just I wouldn't be physically here.
I think Zoom would be fine, if you want to do planning commission, Zoom would be fine.
I mean, if that's what we do, this morning,
I don't see why not. I mean,
Is there no reason?
Get a booth set up.
not currently.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's really architect.
If you want to volunteer.
There it is.
Just because I'm not a very.
I think I'm making sure I'm on board.
All right. Okay, you're gathering.
We're getting ready, just thought I'd let everybody know I'm about ready to gavel. All right. We'll start the Creswell budget meeting, May 6, 2025. I'm just gonna go ahead and do kind of a roll call. And Alan, I'll start with you, if you, your name and title, and we'll go down the dais, make sure everybody's here.
Hi, I'm Alan Dukes, City Councilor.
Christina Corsi, community member.
Perfect,
Joan Morris, City Council.
thank you,
Cameron Berg, Budget Committee.
thank you.
Alonso Costilla, Creswell City Council.
Thank you.
Joshua Johnson, Budget Committee member.
Nick Smith, Mayor.
Stacy Holt, City Council.
Eric Isaacson, Budget Committee member.
James Graham, citizen and budget committee member.
Mark Kramer, City Councilor.
Shelley Clark, citizen and committee member.
Clark Kent, City Councilor.
Thank you. And Robert Jackson will be late, about 15 minutes or so, but he should be here, so we'll just plan on that. And before I do take a motion to have a budget committee chair, can we pledge allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so I'll be entertaining a motion to pass the gavels for a budget committee chair. Stacy?
I think I'd like to nominate Dave Strum.
You took my idea. Councilor Gann?
Seconded it.
Thank
There's
you.
a second. All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. I'll see if you can lift it.
I have never been the chair of the budget committee.
You are now, sir.
I'm glad it's me, it's the end of the hour.
Well, let's see, I guess I better get my agenda out again. All right, so the next item then is to select a vice chair. So we are opening the floor for nominations for vice chair. Mayor Smith.
I nominate Shelley.
Are there additional nominations? Councilor Holt.
I will second the nomination for Shelley Clark.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further nominations? All right, we will vote. All those in favor of Shelley Clark as vice chair, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes with only one voting against, and that was Shelley Clark. Okay, so first item is we need to approve the budget committee minutes from May 21, 2024. Did everyone have a chance to look those over, or do we need to take a moment for you to review them? Are we ready, or do we want to review? Looks like we're ready. So I'm opening the floor for a motion to approve the budget committee minutes from May 21, 2024. Councilor Castillo?
I'll make a motion to approve the City of Creswell Budget Committee meeting minutes from May 21, 2024.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Second from Mr. Isaacson. All right. So there's chatter from the floor. Do we need to pause what we're doing, or are we good to?
No, it's resolved.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion of the budget committee minutes? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise their hand. All those opposed, same sign. Budget committee minutes from 2024, May 21st are approved, and we now welcome Robert Jackson into our midst. Thank you, Robert, for being able to join us tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so we move from there to receiving the budget message, and I believe that will come from Mr. Piper, is that correct?
Yes, Chair Strand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. But before that, I want to turn this over to Interim City Manager Spencer Needle. He's got some comments.
Okay, Spencer.
I just wanted to make a few comments before we get into the budget message. As you know, as you may know, I've been acting city manager for Creswell since December, and it's been a great experience for me being here and seeing the operations of the city and understanding a little more about the Creswell and its various issues and financial condition. I think there's a few things that were really important things to note that I wanted to share with the budget committee about Creswell and the organization. First of all, Creswell has described itself as lean and mean as far as staffing goes, and I wanted Jim to put some numbers to what that actually means. And so Jim did an analysis of a number of cities on an FTE per 1,000 people, and Creswell truly is lean and mean in the nicest way, but in its staffing, because Creswell has 3.8 FTEs per capita, compared with, as an example, 7.9 in Cottage Grove. And in my former city of Newport, we had 15 FTEs per 1,000, but it was a tourism community and we had other things going on. But the only other communities that that even come close to this. Veneta was like 4.2, and then Woodward also doesn't have police and fire, and they were at like 7 FTEs per person. So you are operating with a very lean organization from a FTE standpoint. Secondly, from a property tax rate, you have a very low property tax rate in the city of Creswell at $2.67 and some change per $1,000 of assessment. It's really one of the lowest city tax rates in the state. And so it's important to know that Creswell operates very, very financially frugally in how they operate. And as an example, in the city taxes that are paid on a home with a $400,000 assessed value in Creswell, a property taxpayer would pay $1,068 that would go to the city. In Eugene, that $400,000 house for their tax rate would pay $2,802 to the city. So again, you're operating at a very efficient basis in the property taxes that come to the city to provide city services. Also, the city has done a great job in setting aside reserves for future capital projects. That's been an important thing that the council and staff has focused on over the years. The Water Capital Improvement Fund, the Street Capital Improvement Fund, and various system development funds are really well prepared to pay for some of the infrastructure improvements that will be coming forth in the future. From a year-to-year comparison, you'll see fund balances sometimes go up, sometimes they go down. A lot of times that's a function of a large capital project, and one big project that'll be occurring this year is 2nd Street. And so you'll see those reserves coming down, and those funds that are paying for that, but that's part of the plan in how the budget was structured and how the infrastructure funds would be used. And so I think overall the city's done an excellent job of really recognizing these future needs and having funds available to be able to pay for them as you go. And so the city needs to be really commend itself on that. I can tell you many Oregon cities would be very envious of Creswell's balances in its funds because many cities are really struggling, making cuts and having real challenges in meeting even basic infrastructure needs. I think the biggest challenge going forward for the city in the infrastructure world will be the wastewater issues. And the mayor and I and Jim and some staff members had a meeting today with our various counterparts in Lane County and Springfield and Eugene to talk about the regional wastewater solution, which is the best alternative of the alternatives that are out there from the standpoint of having the lowest cost option going forward. It's also going to be the most complicated option instead of building our own plant because there's so many parties involved with this process. But I think the parties are willing to work together to try to make this work, and it's going to take some time. But wastewater is the one area that is going to require significant resources going forward in the future. The general fund is in very solid shape, and we just had our audit at the last meeting, and our auditor indicated that the City of Creswell had sufficient fund balance in the general fund to operate without any revenue for 233 days. Most cities would be proud to have over 100 days of revenue. So again, you're in good shape with that. Again, when you're looking at fund balances going forward in the future, if you look in the back of the budget, it looks like fund balances are declining in all the funds, but the biggest portion of that is $1 million is pulled out for contingency in these budgets, and that pulls back into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year if unspent. And again, city's pretty frugal about hitting contingency very hard. So typically most of those funds will roll into fund balance at the end of the year. So, I think the mayor, council, and staff have done a great job in managing the financial affairs of the city of Creswell to keep the city in sound financial footing over the years. I do want to really express my compliments to Jim Piper and his finance expertise and really working through these issues. You're very fortunate to have a finance director with Jim's talents and abilities and capabilities to really look forward and try to project things in a positive way. So Jim, it's been great working with you in this capacity, and make sure you hold on to them, because you don't find too many strong finance directors, that you have in a Jim Piper. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jim to go through the budget message. Jim is the budget officer, and he's the individual that has put in many hours in the documents that we're going to be going through.
Thank you, Spencer. Wow, it's a hard one to follow. I guess I'll dig into the budget message. Keep in mind this was written a month ago, but I'm glad that we're all here together to go through this. It's our pleasure to present the City of Creswell proposed fiscal year 26, FY26 budget. The budget has been prepared to satisfy the legal requirements of the State of Oregon budget law, governmental accounting standards, and the City of Creswell financial policies. The City of Creswell continues to provide essential services to the community. These services include policing, municipal court, parks, street maintenance, land use planning, building inspection services, aviation fueling and storage, water treatment and distribution, wastewater collection and treatment. The financial plan for the city is balanced and is a link between public policy, values, and available resources. In October of 2022, the City Council adopted the 5-year strategic plan. The plan reflects the hard work of the City Council and the input received from citizens. The plan directs staff for the next 5 years and therefore is incorporated in this budget document. The plan will continue through fiscal year 2027, or until a new 5-year strategic plan is adopted by the City Council. Specific plan objectives related to robust and sustainable infrastructure are addressed in the reserve transfers to the street, water, and sewer funds. These reserves are being saved to pay for larger priority projects listed in the master planning documents. Additionally, grants and low interest or forgivable loans are pursued to finance the city's infrastructure projects. Capital outlay and reserve for future expenditures make up 60% of the city's proposed budget requirements for FY26. Capital projects are approximately $8 million in FY26, while grant revenues for parks, airport, water, sewer total $3.8 million in funding for these projects. Grants will continue to help maintain the city's infrastructure without costing the ratepayers significantly more. Significant grant awards in the water fund, along with favorable budget results in the last couple of years, have resulted in the Water Rate Advisory Committee recommendation of a 5% rate decrease for water utility rates in FY26. The FY26 budget is accompanied with the City of Creswell Capital Improvement Plan, proposed projects and capital improvements for fiscal year 25-26. We asked the Budget Committee review the CIP in conjunction with the 26 budget. Inflation and retaining proficient workforce continue to challenge the city and businesses in our community. The Consumer Price Index, Western Region as of February 2025, is 2.6% and trending upward. According to U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics Employment Cost Index release, January 31st, 2025, civilian worker and private industry wages increased 3.7% to 3.8% over the prior year, while state and local governments' wages increased 4.5% over the prior year. Despite these challenges, the City of Creswell has avoided over-leveraging the funds. For all the funds of the city, the ending debt reserve fund or debt reserves meet the requirements set by lenders. Likewise, ending fund balance, reserves, and contingency also meet the minimum requirements established by the city fiscal policy. In FY26, there are no new positions added to the city, but there are transitions in key personnel. The longtime city treatment plant operator is retiring and will be replaced by an experienced operator moving to the area. The city manager position will also be filled with a professional new hire. It is anticipated that the city will continue its conservative approach of staffing. The City of Creswell operates with a 3.8 full-time equivalent employees to 1,000 population. This is achieved by retaining highly skilled staff and operating efficiently. Citywide, FY26 personal services will increase $112,400 $506 or 3.9% over the FY25 budget. Of this increase, $102,647 is related to the cost of benefits in FY26 compared to FY25. Medical insurance is the driver of this increase, with rates increasing 9% in FY26. Our benefits providers, City County Insurance, CIS, continues to go through the request for proposals process in an effort to keep rates down. However, industry-wide rates for insurance continue to grow annually. General fund revenue estimates for FY26 indicate approximately $86,000, or a 3% increase over FY25 budget. The increase is due primarily to increases in property taxes, franchise fees, and the public safety fee. In 1997, Oregon Legislative Measure 50 set permanent property tax rates for cities across the state. The city of Creswell, at 2.6705 per thousand assessed taxable value, has one of the lowest city tax rates in Lane County and is in the larger region known as the Willamette Valley. As an example, a home in Creswell with an assessed value of $400,000 would have a city tax of $1,068, while the same $400,000 home in Eugene would have a city tax of $2,802. Further, a taxable assessed values may not grow more than 3% regardless of the housing market. Measure 50 continues to challenge the city's ability to provide services without finding other sources of revenue. The taxable value of all property within the city limits, Creswell city limits, increased by $14 million, 3%, to a total taxable value of $483 million after urban renewal. We estimate that the general fund will receive approximately $1.3 million in current property taxes in FY26. This is only 46% of the resources needed or necessary to provide the $2.8 million in services in the general fund. The other 54% of the resources include state shared revenues, franchise fees, grants, and a public safety fee. The general fund collects investment income that consists of interest earned from the state's local government investment pool. The LGIP has been yielding approximately 5% return. Investment earnings for FY26 are estimated to be $85,000. Sometimes the general fund will loan money to other funds to complete capital projects. The general fund will receive $41,732 in annual interfund loan payments from the airport and the urban renewal funds in FY26. The general fund will also transfer $20,000 in reserves to building department fund to help with operations resulting from slow construction periods in prior years. A transfer to the airport fund of $150,000 is required to reimburse matching provisions of emergency operations center grants and help with operations. For FY26, general fund reserves are budgeted to be reduced by $634,095. Of this, $402,000 is operating contingency. It will likely roll back into next year's beginning fund balance. Combined ending fund balance and operating contingency exceeds $1.2 million, or 5 months of budgeted operating expenses. Professional services for a salary study of $20,000 are proposed, as it has been 5 years since the last study. Investing in staff is a guiding principle from the City of Creswell 5-year strategic plan adopted in FY22. Historically, the city has engaged in a salary study every 5 years in order to stay competitive with other municipal employers in the region. Capital outlay consists of decommissioning the old server and wrapping up the cloud conversion of the network, along with moving to a supported phone system. In culture and recreation, community contributions increased by $10,750 in FY26 compared to FY25. The increase is primarily due to a budget request from the Creswell Area Historical Society for $10,000 to help with their roof project. CHS will be seeking additional funds for the project, estimated to be between $32,000 and $40,000. Staff recommend that the Budget Committee consider this budget request. Capital outlay consists primarily of a grant to construct bathrooms at Robin Hughes Park, formerly South 2nd Street Park. That is a carryover project from FY25. An additional capital project was added in FY26 for design of a footbridge at Garden Lake Park. Public safety, contractual services, police protection will increase $44,606 compared to the prior fiscal year. Rate increase of 56 cents or 3% in the public safety fee is recommended for FY26. Capital outlay of $22,500 is to purchase satellite internet equipment, a drone, and security enhancements for the city's emergency operations center located at Creswell Airport. This is a matching requirement for core grants that were obtained through the airport fund. Planning and land use. Materials and services will be reduced by approximately $20,000 in FY26 compared to FY25. This will be accomplished by applying for an intern from the Resource Assistance for Rural Environments program, the RARE program, at the University of Oregon's Institute for Research and Engagement. By utilizing a RARE intern, the planning department will reduce professional service contracts for planning and the comprehensive plan update line items. The RARE intern will be focused on economic development projects for the city and cost $26,000 for the fiscal year. An AmeriCorps grant of $10,000 will be applied for to assist with these costs of the internship. In the street fund, materials and service for street maintenance will increase approximately $7,000 in FY26 compared to FY25, related to crack sealing, striping, painting projects on 5th Street. In FY26, transfers of $375,000 are proposed to continue funding the Street Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. This transfer consists of $255,000 related to the collection of transportation utility fee TUF, along with state highway use funds in FY26. A portion of construction of South 2nd Street between Oregon Avenue and F Street is budgeted in capital outlay at $209,342 in FY26 to complete this project. Other funds include the Street Capital Improvement Reserve Fund, the Bicycle Footpath Fund, and Transportation Enhancement Fund will also contribute to the project's completion in FY26 as well. The Building Department, transfers from the General Fund $20,000 are budgeted in FY26 to help with operations. The need for the transfer is due to slow construction in FY24, likely related to interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. Building activity has resurged in FY25 and is expected to be stable through FY26. The Water Fund contains federally and state mandated programs. It is necessary for utility rates are structured to ensure that funds are available to pay for operating expenses, ongoing capital needs, and debt service obligations. Operating costs, personal services, and materials and services are proposed to increase approximately $38,000 or 2.5% in FY26. The budgeted capital outlay of approximately $1 million in FY26 is primarily related to water distribution line relocation project and a water line distribution project that is a carryover. I think it's a duplicate. The budget capital outlay of approximately $1 million in FY26 is primarily related to a water distribution line relocation project that is a carryover from FY25. This project is funded by a FEMA grant of $928,350. A 5% rate decrease recommended for FY26 by the Water Rate Advisory Committee due to capital grants that were received and better fiscal results than anticipated in the prior fiscal years, along with a reduction in annual debt service. Transfers of $546,899 are being made to the Water Capital Improvement Fund for current and future capital improvement plans. Sewer Fund. The Sewer Fund is currently reserving funds to address the wastewater treatment facility. The current facility is not able to comply with the Department of Environmental Quality standards for permitting discharge into the unnamed tributary of Creswell Creek. Recently issued DEQ limitations related to ammonia and stricter permit limitations related to biochemical oxygen demand and thermal load were not addressed in the 2018 wastewater facilities master plan. An update of the wastewater facilities plan was completed in FY25. Debt proceeds of $219,120 were issued to pay for the wastewater facilities plan update, with $100,000 of the principal forgivable. Contracted engineers working on the plan update provided the city with a few possible solutions and cost estimates ranging from approximately $40 million to $80 million. The least cost solution is challenged by policy, land use, and acceptance by outside organizations. The next cost solution estimate is approximately $65 million. Whichever wastewater facility solution that the city chooses to go with, it will be financed through a combination of reserves, grants, and debt issuance. In FY26, $1 million of Senate Bill 1530, Section 9 direct appropriation funds will be used on the wastewater collection system upgrades required under the NPDES permit and the MOA issued by the DEQ. The project will slip line aging and damaged pipe throughout a 40-block radius in the downtown area to address inflow and infiltration to the wastewater plant. Total project costs are approximately $5 million that extend into FY28. A sewer rate increase of 15% was recommended for FY26 by the Water Rate Advisory Committee, and transfers of $404,799 are being made to the Sewer Capital Improvement Reserve to meet these obligations. Airport Fund. Operating costs, personal services, and materials and services are proposed to increase approximately $18,000 or 3% in fiscal year 26. Grant awards for the airport master plan and construction of new taxi lanes and utilities for hangar construction are carried over from the prior fiscal years. Additional Emergency Operations Center grants were also obtained in FY26. The total grants in FY26 are budgeted at $1.7 million with the addition of Building Infrastructure Law or bill funds. The general fund will transfer $150,000 to the airport fund to support of operations and the city's match requirements for the airport improvement plan and critical Oregon airport relief grants. The local improvement district fund will have activity in FY26 related to the South 2nd Street project between Oregon Avenue and F Street. Revenue estimates of $148,679 are based on the approved engineer's estimate. After bids were received, construction costs are projected to be less than anticipated. When substantial completion of the project occurs, the final LID will be assessed. Any unused balance will roll into beginning fund balances for future years. Water capital improvements in FY26 consist of $785,000. That's our cost share of the water transmission line relocation project being funded by the $1.2 million in grants. Also, there's approximately $200,000 in costs for water line improvements along South 2nd Street between Oregon Avenue and F Street. This is a carryover from FY25. Street capital improvements in FY26 consist of approximately $716,000 in costs to complete the improvements on South 2nd Street between Oregon Avenue and F Street. Again, estimates are based on the approved engineer's report. Bids were substantially lower than anticipated, and any unexpended amounts will roll into beginning fund balances for future years. System development charges account for revenues and expenditures for projects associated with development of residential or commercial property growth in the community. SDCs are held in reserve for projects in accordance with ORS Chapter 223 and can only be expended for purposes specifically outlined in ORS 223.307. In FY26, expenditures for improvements at Robinette Hughes Park are budgeted approximately $132,800, and a stormwater SDC study will be completed for approximately $10,000. Both projects are carried over from FY25. Transportation system enhancements in FY26 consist of $420,000 in costs to complete the improvements on South 2nd Street between Oregon Avenue and F Street. Attached is the funding request from Creswell Area Historical Society. CHS is asking for a $10,000 donation to repair the roof. This represents approximately 25% of the total cost, and CAS will be doing additional funding to secure the project funds. Staff recommends funding this request. We'd like to thank the residents of Creswell for putting your trust in your local government leadership and providing your input as community members as the City Council makes policy decisions to help improve the livability of our community. We'd also like to extend our special thanks to the Creswell professional staff for their efforts in researching and providing financial information for preparation of the budget. Lastly, we'd like to thank the City Council and citizen members of the Budget Committee for your support and willingness to serve your community. It is an honor to work with professional and skilled city employees and community volunteers to develop and implement the FY26 budget. Respectfully submitted by myself and Spencer.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So now we move on to item 6, which is the presentation of the overview of the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 budget. It's back to you, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Chair Strand. So this presentation is just a high-level overview, and I'm showing you what's changed from last year. There's much more reading to do in the budget document itself, and then we'll have time for some questions afterwards. And as some of you, most of you know from prior year service on this committee, that there's a 2-week period where we encourage people to ask questions. We put together a questions and answer document that we'd like to share to the public. We'll put it on our website. We'll also bring it to the next meeting, and we can go over some of those questions and responses. And yeah, I hope we have another successful budget season. Let's go over the presentation. We'll start with beginning fund balances. As Spencer alluded to, this is money carried over from previous fiscal years, and the city's in pretty good shape. $21 million in beginning fund balances. 8.8 million of it is system development charges, those items that are restricted to increasing capacity within the system. That accounts for about 42% of beginning fund balances. If you add in the capital project funds, the street, water, wastewater, parks, or not parks rather.
Storm sewer.
Yeah, we don't, not in the capital, those are in STCs. That's where I went off track there. I was talking about STC funds. Capital projects funds, we have a general capital project fund for City Hall, and then we have one for water, sewer, and streets. And that's another 29% of beginning fund balances. So combining the SDCs and the capital projects, these big ticket items, it accounts for 71% of the total beginning fund balances. So that leaves 29% of the beginning fund balances for the rest of the city to operate on. Which again, as Spencer alluded to, that's still pretty good compared to other cities. In this pie chart, you can see the general fund is about 7% of that. Street fund's about 2% of that. You get in the water and sewer, 10 and 8% of beginning fund balance. Those are our biggest operational funds. Airport, we run it lean, 1% of beginning fund balance. General fund, there's a decrease in ending fund balance of $634,000, as we talked about in the budget message. A lot of it's due to non-routine capital projects and contingency, so these are one-offs. This will happen this year, but not every year. These are non-operating expenses. $402,000 of it's contingency reserves, just in case we have a moment where we have to emergency where we have to spend some money. But likely those will roll into ending fund balance or next year's beginning fund balance. $11,000 for some parks equipment, $150,000 transfer to the airport, $20,000 transfer to the building department, $20,000 for phone server replacement, and also finishing decommission of the server that's on premise. And there's also some switching equipment too related to that. UPSs. I won't bore you with all the details, but roughly about $20,000, not to exceed. And then $25,000 is for the Garden Lake Park Bridge engineering and design a bridge over there. For the capital project funds, we're expecting a decrease in ending fund balance of about $1.5 million. Again, we got some pretty big projects this coming fiscal year. We got we've slated $329,000 to complete construction of City Hall. If you're not aware, about half of the upstairs is unfinished, and so we could finish that space and provide more office space. Right now, we are at capacity downstairs. if the city grows in the future, we will have to start putting people in the kitchen or build something upstairs for them to habitat in. $785,000 is just the city share for the water line relocation. $200,000 water line improvements on South Second Street. $1 million slip lining for sewer collection system. $716,000 for Second Street improvements. But then we're going to add back $1.3 million, $1.327 million in transfers in to these capital project funds for the year. And then these funds are projected to earn about $262,000 in interest. SDC funds, we're going to see a decrease of about $36,000 related to the park improvements at Hughes Robinette Park to put in the restrooms, and also to add some capacity to Second Street, $420,000 coming out of the Transportation Enhancement Fund, or the street SDCs. But adding back SDCs collected for the year, approximately $168,000, and then some investment earnings of about $349,000 citywide. So the general fund program requirements is $2.8 million. A little over half, 51% of that is public safety, and that's pretty much every city across the state. You look, public safety is important. It's a big expense to the general fund. This is just the general fund. Planning is about 8%, admin about 19%, and then culture and rec, that's your parks program, but it's also maintenance of those parks. It's also the events that we put on, like the 4th of July. Well, we send those monies to the chamber, but they put on the 4th of July and such. That's 22% of the general fund budget. Property taxes, $1.3 million. This graph shows you that they just steadily increase every year, about 3%, as is the design of Measure 50. You can see that the market value has increased exponentially since looks like about 2018. We all know this, housing prices have gone sky high, and so the market value's gone up. But I will say the property taxes are pretty consistent year over year. Even if the market were to go back down, we're still going to be pretty much guaranteed a 3% increase year over year in the assessed value. Franchise fees, $422,000. The only thing I saw that was noteworthy was the Pacific Power increased. It looks like about 23-24 fiscal year, and as we all know, it's just the product of their rates increase. So as their rates increase, cities' franchise agreement is based on 5% of gross revenues, so our revenue stream also went up. So other general fund revenues, intergovernmental revenues like the liquor and cigarette tax, state share revenues account for $161,000. Hotel motel tax and telecom, $85,000. I really wish we got TRT like the Coast does, but wishful thinking. They're in the millions, but we're going to have about $85,000 in TRT and telecom tax. Public safety fee, $591,000. The RTMP, that's our Rural Tourism Marketing Program that's received from Lane County, about $30,000. Court fines, fees, and penalties, $35,000. And license and permits and building use, that's rental of the community center, the Cobalt Activity Center, $24,000 for the fiscal year. Interest of about $68,000 in the general fund, and interfund loan payments about $42,000. General fund programs, personal services increased about $42,000 or 6.2% in FY26. Most of this is related to medical increase of 9%, dental increase, and a COLA of 3%. Materials and services decrease of about $62,000 is related to reduction in the comprehensive plan work in planning, and then the reduction in parks maintenance. We had a one-time expense in FY25 at the park that was about $20,000 to replace some equipment. We're Reduction in tourism spending by 15,000. We had a one-time, in the current fiscal year FY '25, one-time expense for tourism related to putting in a new reader board sign at the airport. That won't be repeated in FY '26. Reduction in city hall maintenance of about 13,000. So street funds, you can see street highway use revenues have gone up, starting in 21-22. They really picked up, I think, House Bill 2017. The state gas tax has been increasing incrementally. I think it's peaked out now under that bill. Also, our vehicle registrations have gone up, and but that is coming to the city for street fund for street projects. So we've had a nice bump in the revenue there, which is helping us out when we analyze the TUF fee the last work session. Street fund, total personal services and material services of 439,000, increase of about 13,000, and that's related to medical, dental, COLA. Materials and services increase of 13,000. Increase in maintenance and street sweeping. I mentioned in the letter that the budget message, there's some crack sealing on 5th Street. $202,000 for the 2nd Street improvements. Of that, we have some federal state exchange funds of $72,000 that are gonna help pay for that. And then the LID transfer, so the LID fund will track the debt from the property owners, and then it'll transfer the funds over to the street fund so the street fund can do the work. Bicycle footpath, $3,200 for annual striping and maintenance, and then $22,000 in capital outlay this year for the South 2nd Street improvements related to the bike lanes. Building department fund, as you can see, housing kind of dropped off in 2017, 2018, kind of peaked and then it dropped off. Steady. It has been picking up in the current fiscal year, and we see that potential to keep going with the Boulder Butte development going in. All other permit activities, HVAC repairs, additions, all of that seems to stay pretty steady. Personal services increase of about 7,000 in FY '26 for the building department, and that's again related to the medical, dental, and the COLA. Materials and services increase of about $1,500, and that's related to some additional training. The water fund, personal services, material services equals about $1.5 million. It's about $38,000 or 2.5% more than the prior fiscal year, and 14,000 of it's related to the COLA, 14,000 is related to the benefits, and then 10,000 in vehicle and equipment maintenance increase year over year over the prior year. There's a decrease of about 1.4 million in capital outlay. Most of that is projects that are falling off the list, but we do have some rollovers. So we're completing the water tank seismic activity. We're completing the water, we call it the water line track project, but that's kind of confusing. That's where the flexible hose connects to the water tank. But there's then the addition of the water line transmission that's coming from the tanks that's need to be put into the public or into the right of way. And Waterfront's picking up $928,000 of that. But it is grant funded by FEMA. Transfers equal 24 audit revenues over expenditures of $546,899. In sewer, personal services and material services for FY '26 equals about 1.2 million. It's about a $300,000 decrease. We had $200,000 in TV scoping work that was done in fiscal year '25, continuing to be done. That was grant funded, and then $157,000 wastewater facilities master plan update in the prior year. DEQ partially forgivable loan that we took out for that. So, and again, transfers equals the FY24 audit revenues over expenditures of $404,799. Airport fund, personal services and materials and services, FY26 equals $527,000. It's an increase of about $18,000 compared to FY25. It's mainly the increases in personal services and fuel costs at the airport. A caveat to that, the fuel costs, meaning we're expecting more volume, which also means more revenue, so more sales at the pump with a margin, so that's good. 500,000 airport master plan updates about to get kicked off now, and so we'll be funding it with the FAA AIP grant at 90%, at $455,000, and then CORE will fund $45,000 of that. They'll fund 10%, 90% of the match, and then we have to pick up, or 9% of the match, and then we have to pick up. Okay, 90% of the match. It's 10% match. They'll pick up 9%, 90%. So leaves the city picking up the other $5,000 or 1% of the project cost. $918,000 for new taxi lanes and utilities for future hangar construction. And I think we finally found a solution to get around the issue with NEPA, and Shelley's put a lot of hard work into this. But we really need to build those hangars. I mean, that's green grass that's being mowed that could be actual leased hangars. Revenue for the city, yes. $175,000 for airport security enhancements. An automated gate funded by the core grants, $157,500 of that $175 is going to be funded by core. And then some additional EOC security enhancements funded by ODA core grants, $124,000 to pick up those funds. I think it's a total of 3 gates, if memory serves, of electronic gates at the airport. So a lot of projects going on this next fiscal year, and big looming cloud of the sewer plant, of course, or the wastewater solution, kind of weighs over us all as well. But that's basically the high level of the budget. I'm hoping you all have some questions.
Okay, let's open the floor for questions. Just raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you and you can ask away. Joshua.
Quick question on the administration, where you
And then
mentioned.
when you ask the question, if you can tell us what you're referring to and what page, then we can all track along with you, okay?
I apologize. On page 13, on the summary, under administration, we've got the third paragraph there where you mentioned a capital outlay. Is that a capital outlay increase or a decrease on decommissioning the old server?
It's just carryover. It's about $9,000 of the project cost from the prior year to decommission the old server and wrap up the cloud conversion. It could end up being less than that. I'm trying to gauge where we're at with the project now. We're supposed to wrap it up at the end of this fiscal year. I just want to make sure that as we go into the next fiscal year, we have the funds to finish that project and get the old server decommissioned and make sure that we're secure.
Okay, so the purpose of this was to decrease the cost of services moving forward.
Moving forward, yeah. We're on a scheduled 5-year, or keep extending the warranty for a couple more years on the server on-prem, and one on-premise server is a security risk in and of itself, and it's just costly to replace those things. They're expensive.
Thank you.
Okay, Derek.
Derek Isaacson, on the same page, 13, I had a question about the loan funds to the capital projects there, the third paragraph down. I was wondering how much of that was to the airport? And then follow up on that, we're transferring funds from the general fund, $150,000 as part of that. So they have operations funds to pay back this loan fund? Or is this a grant? Or is it funding?
So the loans were to buy hangars that we were able to lease back and pay the debt service on those loans. And that's a 10-year period that we have to pay those back. Once we pay those back, it's that will go into the airport revenue. The transfers for operations is to help the airport fund right now. Part of it is to pay the match requirements for the grants, and some of those grants are for actually public safety and not the airport itself. It's the emergency operations center just happens to be at the airport, but it's really more of a public safety department function. You see the transfers coming over, but part of that is for operations. And it's always been the goal that the city build more hangars and house more airplanes and sell more fuel at the airport to start making up that gap. We just had an environmental issue that kind of set us back on the building those hangars by about 3 years. It seems like we've been trying to build the taxi lanes and put in the utilities for those, construct those hangars for a while. But good question. No, the interfund loans are paid back by the leases themselves, so they're fully funded by the lease transaction. And when those are fully paid off, that'll be a good revenue stream for the airport.
Thank you.
Councilor Holt?
How much are we requesting for COLA this year?
3%.
And that's based on what CPI value? What CPI did you use?
It was a mixture of the Western region, and then last year it was brought to our attention that there is an actual labor and statistics employment cost index that's out there, and that one was considerably higher. I didn't consider that to be the target. They were projecting 4.5% for government, and
I'm seeing a CPI, a rolling 12-month period ending in March 2025 of 2.4 on the government's website, which seems to me more reasonable. And the reason I even bring this up, because it states very clearly in this, civilian worker and private industry wages increased 3.7 to 3.8%.
Can you tell us where you're reading from, Stacy?
Page 11, second to the last paragraph.
Okay.
3.7 to 3.8% over the prior year, while state and local government wages increased 4.5% over the prior year. This is what we need to avoid, because you're asking your constituents to pay higher wages to the city employees than they can manage to keep up with on their own. And it's interesting to me that they say that private industry wages increased 3.7 to 3. I would say only some private industry wages increase that much, because there are plenty of people that don't see a COLA or even a yearly raise in the private industry. And so I'm not real comfortable with going higher, requesting a higher COLA than what makes sense based on, the CPI that I'm seeing. Clearly there are several places we can look at that. So, but I just wanted to bring that up. I have one other question. Actually, I have a couple. What is planning in the general fund requirements? I don't have the page. When I took notes, I didn't write page numbers down. I apologize. You threw up the pie chart, and it showed 8%. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, actually, it might have been in. Just a second. It is in the handout
Oh, yes.
on page 4. What is planning in this?
So that is the planning and land use department.
Oh, okay. So that's just that department. Okay, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great question.
And then, is everyone at City Hall working in the office every day?
I believe so.
Well,
We got,
the only one that's currently working primarily from home is our code enforcement officer.
Interesting. Because I don't understand the need to finish City Hall upstairs right now. And so just curious, that's why I asked that question. And then the Garden Lake Park Bridge, is that a joke? The engineering's gonna cost us $25,000 for that?
The Parks and Rec is, no, I don't think it's a joke. 25 doesn't go very far on engineering expenses. But that's an allowance to allow for determination about where the bridge would be built. And that's basically to allow a loop around the park. Because right now you can go one way or another way and you dead end on each way. This would bridge that together, so.
Sure, that makes sense. That's a lot of money to pay for a bridge. For the designing of the bridge. It's actually rather egregious. Is it possible that we can seek other bids?
Yeah, there's no bids on it yet.
Oh,
It's
okay.
basically a bunch
We
of-
seem to only use one firm, so that's why I'm asking that. All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
So as a follow-up, when you put together the Q&A worksheet that comes back out to all of us in another week and a half, or whatever, could you include the information on the COLA as to where you're getting the data that feeds into that 3%, so we can all see that? Okay, another question. Joshua?
So just to follow up on the previous.
Microphone?
Oh, is it not going?
Red button.
No, you
think it's
had
on
it
now.
the second time out.
Just to follow up on the question about the bridge, do we have any approximate size that it's going to be?
It's a pedestrian bridge that would cross over, and I think that design, the design would really tell us where you would build, and there's wetlands in the area as well, so how much of it has to be elevated. So it's still a conceptual sort of issue of exactly what you would have to put in that place to bridge and make that connection from those 2 points.
Okay, I think it could be helpful, like if they cost us $25,000 for engineering, if this was going to be a bridge that was 100 feet long, or if it was going to be a bridge that was 10 feet long.
Yeah, no, it's much more than 10 feet. so.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
That is helpful.
Mayor Smith?
Piggyback on the construction of the second level too. So where did the 329K come from if we're just estimating? How did we get to that number?
it was estimated by the architect who initially came out and looked at it. It would be somewhere around 300,000, and then we adjusted for inflation since that time. I think it was, Cliff, do you remember what year he came out? Was it?
I don't, but it's been
Pre-COVID?
several, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I would like to see that developed at the right time for Creswell for sure. We want to grow into it, but that seems insane. It's already dried in and roughed in, and so it's literally sheetrock, some carpet, and some flooring. So that, and would that have to be a prevailing wage job because if it's over the 50K?
Yeah, because it's over 50K, it has to be.
Is there a way to do that in a under 50K step at a time? Because I know I could personally, but I don't know if the government can. But there would be another way for us to maybe agree or get the funding to do that if we did it more in stages where we could be under and not do prevailing wage and hire a local contractor that's a little more intimate with Creswell and might benefit us a lot more.
Yeah, we'd have to look into that.
I don't know if that's possible, but that's my 2 cents on that one. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in. Early on in our meeting, it talks about that the budget is designed with a strategic plan in mind. And so as we're talking about the second floor development, what popped up in my mind is that in the strategic plan? And maybe it'd be a good idea, Jim, if you could send out the strategic plan electronically to all the members of the budget committee so that we can all review that. So that if some of these things come up, we might see a connect. That's something you could do?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Additional questions? And no questions are dumb questions, so feel free to ask. We've got Shelley Clark down here.
So I just wanted to ask a question on the sewer fund, and so it's really, I'm referencing page 15 of the budget message, kind of in the middle of the page, where it talks about essentially there's a cost estimate for the sewer fund ranging from 40 to 80 million. And having been part of previous conversations, I understand why the range of $40 million. And so, the least cost solution is challenged by policy, land use, and acceptance by outside organizations. The next least cost solution is approximately $65 million. And so I believe that we're trying to make headway on the least cost solution, which I think, yes, let's do that. And so I was just wondering if there is an update on how that process is going and if that is still looking promising, because that could be quite the budget savings.
Yeah, no, we had actually a meeting today. Mayor Smith was part of that meeting with the various stakeholders involved with the decision-making that would have to happen. And again, it's a very complex project, but it seems there's a general willingness to try to work through these complexities. And there's a number of timing issues that are critical for the city, and we'll probably be contacting the DEQ to see if we can have some relief on one of our deadlines on that to allow this process to work its way through the various channels, because there's both land use planning issues that are significant that have to be addressed, as well as we have to make sure that the county has the funding and can proceed with the forced main that would be built from Goshen to Springfield that we would connect into, because we don't want to build a line to Goshen and not have anything to connect to. And so the next stage of that is we have to do a pre-design on our selected alternative. And that's what we're going to ask to see if we can get some additional time on to allow this process to play out. And I think folks have been very willing to work with the city of Creswell. I don't think anyone's against it conceptually, but there's still a number of questions that are going to take probably the next couple of years to work through to determine whether that's a feasible alternative or not. So it's the lowest cost, but definitely the most complex option.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, Joshua.
On page 88, under the Water SDC Reserve Fund, Resources and Expenditures, I noticed under resources for the development fees, the reimbursement and admin fee from year to year seems to vary quite widely. Can you help explain why this would be a difficult item to project and approve?
Let's just pause a second so we can all get to page 88. Everybody get to 88, and then Josh, if you could, hate to make you do this, but can you repeat the question? Give us 30 seconds, make sure we all get to page 88. Are we all there?
No worries.
Okay, tell us where you're at and then restate your question.
Okay, on page 88 at the very top where you've got the system development fees for the Water SDC Reserve Fund, I noticed that the reimbursement and admin fees seem to vary widely from year to year. And I was just curious if we had an explanation as to why projected numbers would differ so much from actual numbers.
Sure, it's a great question. Those numbers are really volatile, especially the water SDC. We have done the SDC study and found that our water funds are pretty well funded. So we do have a reimbursement. We don't even have an improvement SDC for water at this time. And it can vary depending on the amount of commercial activity we have. I really don't mind commercial development because it can really boost those numbers. So the years that we have a higher water SDC, that's probably something that had a bigger than 3/4 inch meter connection. Those SDCs are much higher, like say a 1.5 inch meter or a 3 inch meter. For example, McDonald's was a great contributor to the projected 24-25 number that you see there. We actually were projecting 23, and they helped us get up over 30,000 for the reimbursement. The admin fee is just a percentage of the reimbursement, so
Thank
it's
you.
pretty straightforward.
Okay. Other questions? Kelly?
Yes, so first, this is not a question, but I guess a commendation at the bottom of page 15 under the debt service fund. I just wanted to just highlight that after bids were received, construction costs are projected to be less than anticipated, and that's swell. That's fantastic. So I just wanted to see that. But I also wanted to ask just a couple of questions. There was a few times in the attachment as we were referencing the Creswell Area Historical Society request for that $10,000 donation to pay for the roof. I noticed that staff recommends this request or funding this request, and so I was wondering if you wanted to speak to that recommendation just a little bit more.
I'm sure. Since my time with the city, started here in 2015, the city has funded the Historical Society and helped it continue to stay open. I think the building itself is kind of a vision of downtown Creswell. So, and the fact that they're not asking for the entire 40,000 says that, you know, they plan on doing some work themselves to go out and beat the pavement, as they say, and go knock on doors to get the rest of the funding. So I think that speaks well to.
An additional comment on that line is the city logo features the museum. That's the picture. And I wear that around. Oftentimes people say, oh, what church is that in Creswell? I say, it's our museum, housed in the former Methodist church. So we have Monica with us tonight, and also Amy, correct? So you'll notice on page 17 that the very lovely letter that the two of you wrote, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. So is it okay?
Sure. Make it.
Just to add a comment to maybe help with your question. So we have applied for other grants as well to go for funds to help with this project. And then we also, of course, are doing other kinds of things to get the community involved in the way that they can to help contribute and make it something that the whole community can be a part of. So.
Okay. Additional questions? Josh?
On page 114, I will pause for people to get there.
Thank you. 114.
One question that I had about the depreciation methods and the estimated useful lives. Are these being adjusted when we're moving away from physical computers and physical equipment to cloud resources? And if so, what will be the depreciation method used for cloud resources?
That's a great question. That's something we're going to have to tackle. Yeah, because instead of the physical, we're going to have to work with our auditors on doing a footnote disclosure for these capital assets that basically we're leasing, right? The server space on Microsoft essentially is our new asset. So we'll be working on that. I would still try to keep it. That's a great question. I'll actually have to dig into that one.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Other questions? Okay, well, before we wrap this up, so members of the committee, I want to encourage you to ask your questions, submit your questions to Jim over the next 10 days.
Yeah, give me a little bit of time to.
Give him some time. Submit your questions to Jim via email, or if you want to come in person, but email works real well. Jim will then compile all the questions at one time, is that correct?
Yeah. Actually, I'll do them incrementally, so as you're sending them in, and I'll just keep updating the website.
Okay. So your responses will be on the website, or will you be sending a final email to all of us with all the questions compiled?
I prefer to keep it on the website, that way we don't create a serial meeting via email. That's a risk of doing it that way, so rather just keep it on the website.
Okay, so I wasn't referring to a serial meeting, I was meaning a compilation of all questions that would be sent to all members of the committee at one time. And I think that's what happened last year.
Oh, it will be included in the packet, you're right. So it'll be a packet material at the end when I send out the agenda and the.
So prior to our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so submit your questions to Jim. In addition, this is a great time over the next 2 weeks to ask for tours of city-owned facilities, water, sewer, parks, go out Garden Lake Park, walk around the non-existent bridge, get ideas on that. Come up and ask for a tour of the big room that's over here and look it over. So this is the time to get those tours lined up. Contact Jim or contact Spencer if you want a tour. What would you prefer?
Either one would be fine, so.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have a question, if you have want to have a tour, contact either Spencer or Jim. It's also a great time to think about getting a ride around with our sheriff deputies. You may not be able to get one in the next 2 weeks, but still, as you can see, such a large part of our budget goes towards our contract with Lane County. And I think it's a great idea for members of this committee to have a ride around at some point and get acquainted with our deputies, see what's happening in Creswell. The other thing I wanted to encourage you, if you go to page 112 in your, and I'll get to your question in just a second, Joshua. If you go to page 112, this is the appendix, you'll see financial policies overview. And so when Jim and Spencer are talking about our ending fund balance and how many days we have and some things like that, that's about a dozen years that we've been at that place. Because 14 years ago, the city said, we've got to have some policies in place that guard our funds and set guidelines on how much money we need set aside every year so we don't spend it. And so if you look at page 112 and the following couple pages, you'll find two very important policies that were adopted in 2016 and 2014 by the City Council that talk about ending fund balances. And it keeps us from going to bad places because we got these policies in place. So I think this is an important part for you to read in the budget. I have written one other note someplace. No, that was it. Okay, Joshua?
On the very last page, I wanted to know, is it appropriate to ask questions at all about the budget amendments that were made from last year's budget to this one?
Completely appropriate. This is an addition that Spencer suggested we add to it. I think it's a great enhancement of the budget. We can see where we were last year and where we ended up by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Sure.
One question I did have then was in regards to the water fund, where it looks like there was a $150,000 difference between the capital outlay. Do you have any?
This is page 115, right?
125.
125 in the budget.
Yes, it just seemed like quite a large swing, and I was curious if you had any.
Yeah, that's a great question. This started with the replacement of the handheld meter, the meter handheld reader, the meter readers, the handheld meter readers. They've now morphed into what looks like a cell phone. In fact, essentially it is a cell phone with a program that the Public Works can drive around their truck and capture the signal from the meters, and it really saves time. When they implemented that, those devices would not capture certain radios in the city, and it turned out we did a inventory out of the billing system, and it seems like there was 800 radios that weren't the newer technology, newer frequency. So the newer frequencies read it like 45 miles an hour. So you can drive normal through the city streets and pick up meters. the older technology that we replaced, you had to drive like 5 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour to pick up a signal. So that's why you see these utility trucks like pull over and stop, and then they drive a couple hundred feet and then stop again. Really cuts down on the time it takes to read the meters. But it was a massive replacement all at once. We typically replace those things more over 3 or 4 years, and this was just a one-time. So we did put 800 brand new radios on the meters in town and increase the efficiency of the meter reads. Also cut the costs on the handheld units themselves. Those handheld units, we have 2 of them in City Hall to read routes, and those were like $16,000 a piece initially. The little cell phone looking devices are like $2,500. So it's cutting costs now on the machines itself to read those meters.
Okay, because my question is specific about what was the original appropriation was $2.22 million for that, and then the approved revision was $2.37 million. That $150,000 change between there, can you explain why that was so wildly different?
Yeah, it was the purchase of those radios.
So that's what that was.
Yeah.
The radio meter replacements,
Yeah.
it was the purchase of the radios in addition, so the 800 radios were what were $150,000?
Yeah, yes, and
Okay.
That wasn't anticipated at the time the budget was approved.
that was not
Yeah,
anticipated.
can I add to that too? If I recall right, we had ours, the ones that we did have, the life was expiring, but they also, if we turned them in a little early, they give us a little bit of a credit, so we actually saved a little bit of money. Just to add to that, great question, but we turned them in, so we saved a few bucks early, but then along with the additional cost, so we went ahead and spent the money sooner, so we get some of it back. So it could have been a little bit more, so Jim did save money in Cliff, because I'd asked that same thing, can we sell them? Is there a used market for those? Apparently there was not, but we did get a return the old ones, and we got some money back.
Okay.
Just a little anecdote there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think they got like an 8-year, and Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong, 8-year battery, and they prorate it if they die early. In this case, we had to pull them, and we had the contractor at our site saying, well, these handhelds aren't gonna read your old meters. So we kinda had them in a spot where they had to, give us prorate to take back the old ones, since they sold us these handhelds that wouldn't read the old meters. So actually turned out to be a good thing for the city.
Okay, so to clarify then, this cost would not fall under the computers, printers, network, and peripherals of 3 to 5 years. This would be at 8 years?
These are actually expense for, these are less than $5,000 individually, so these units don't get capitalized and depreciated over time. It was just an outright expense at the time of purchase.
Do we know the time span of these devices? Their useful lifespan?
I believe 8 years, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Look, they have a 10-year battery life.
10 year.
And so if they go out before 10 years, they're prorated back. And most of the ones that we returned were about 8 years, so we got 2 years of credit back on them. And they're an old radio frequency that is no longer supported. So the new handhelds, which read much faster and much more efficient, will not read those old radios. That's why new ones were installed in one big swoop.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, yeah, they have a useful life of more than a year, but they didn't meet the 5,000 per unit threshold for capitalizing them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? All right, so we go to number 7. So this is public comment on the proposed budget and possible uses of state revenue sharing. So Jim, can you tell us where we look in our budget to find information on state revenue sharing and where those funds are proposed for?
Sure, I'll walk you through it. It's in the general fund. Resources on page 45.
Page 45. Give us all a second to find that page. Okay. All right, walk us through.
So, 4th category down, intergovernmental, state revenue sharing. Proposed 25-26 budget of $67,000. In order to receive these from the state, we have to have a proposed purpose, hold a public hearing, and accept state shared revenues. We proposed in the budget to spend them on long-range planning in the Planning and Land Use Department on page 53. So those will be spent on comp plan update, contractual services, economic development, and then on page 49, in culture and recreation requirements, we'll also spend them under community contributions. And that is proposed at $34,250, and that includes the contributions to Creswell First, and also the $10,000 ask from the Historical Society to help with their roof.
So that's where the increase from 23,165 a year ago was,
Correct.
okay? Okay, so at this time, we are open for public comment on the proposed budget and possible use of state revenue sharing. So Angela, do we need people to fill out a form and bring that to you, like we do for public comment?
I think as long as we get names, we can capture the names in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we online? Do we have any questions online? Do we do that?
Check the feed here. Let's go to our channel. Well, we don't have any likes, and it doesn't look like anybody's commented on YouTube. Screen. Sorry. Check our live feed right now. Some comments on our citywide yard sale post, but nothing related to this stream.
Okay, so members of the public who are here tonight, does anyone have any comments on the proposed budget or possible uses of state revenue sharing? Yes, stand up and tell us your name.
Curtsy, maybe?
Debbie, I'm just curious about the bridge at Garden Lake Park. I'm just curious, like, I know you don't have all the specs, how long it's gonna be, where it's gonna go, but didn't we have an issue with some of the homeless and other people using a prior bridge that got undone to keep them from traveling into the residential community? So I'm just kind of curious.
No, that's a different bridge
Okay.
than what's proposed. That went into the subdivision,
Yeah.
and that's not the bridge that's being proposed. If you walk around Garden Lake, the trail dead ends on one point, and there's a spot where it comes close to the other point, and it would allow someone to walk entirely around the lake instead of coming to two dead ends on the trail. So it's not the bridge
So
that
it's
you're
not a
thinking
bridge
of.
to nowhere, so,
No.
just kidding.
Yeah, this bridge will allow people to do the full service. So, yeah. Right now, the trail is a trail to nowhere, so.
Thank you for that great question and clarification. Any other comments about the budget or proposed revenue sharing? Okay, if not, then we move to item number 8. Oh, yes? Yes, stand and state your name, please.
Just a minute. My name's Monica Knight, and I'm the treasurer of the Creswell Area Historical Society, and I volunteer at the museum. And I just wanted to make a comment that I know you'll be considering our or a $10,000 wish, but if any of you haven't come to the museum lately, I think you should take a tour of the museum too, just to see what the money might be going to, because it's changed a lot in the last few years. So that's all I wanted to say. But yes, not come for the, you can come to the garage sale, but after the garage sale.
Okay, and we have is this a follow-up to Monica?
Yes.
Yes, Stacy?
Could you please remind everyone what your hours of operation are and days you're open?
We're open every Saturday from 11 to 2 now. So, and we have been getting more people, and we've been getting a lot of comments, good comments about the museum. And like I said, it's changed a lot over the last few years. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, then we move to item number 8. So, Jim, Spencer, any final comments before we're all adjourned?
I have no other comments. No.
Okay.
I don't have.
Submit your questions. One last note is that as members of the Budget Committee, we're prohibited by law to speak about the budget to one another in the next 2 weeks. That would constitute a possible serial meeting. However, you are not prohibited from speaking to all the other citizens of Creswell and business people that are impacted by this budget and sharing with them highlights, asking opinions, getting that information, and I encourage you to do that. And with that, ooh, this is heavy. Wow. You are adjourned. We are adjourned. Man, I would have had to resign a lot earlier if I had to. Either that or take a bodybuilding.
I saw that, yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick, I think you need like Mjolnir or his hammer.
What do they call that? Tommy John's?
Oh, boy. Okay.
I like it with Thor's hammer.
Great job tonight, man. Jim, great job tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Sorry. Some work.
You got that all right, huh? Charity meeting tonight.
Probably be called.
Next meeting. Who were we?
I love you now.
Thanks, Derek. Good to see you, Mark.
Yes, you too.
It is well right on the website.
Great meeting tonight.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go to now and change go to the now recorded. I get the link just for now.
Standing over underneath the clock, 1 o'clock next morning.
Wonder what was discussed that night. I need to get that get some vitamin D. I'm likely to just go right. She pointed out, she talked to me today about it. I look forward to meeting you, cheese.
We're trying to catch it everywhere else, but budget message. Oh my goodness. I'll correct it.
Well, thanks, Stacy, for nominating me. It caught me off guard. I wasn't planning on this.
Yeah, we're gonna try it all the way through.
Yeah, I would have voted.
That's the one, the hearings next week.
Well, perfect. I made your dreams come
So,
true.
give me a first. All right, thank you.
Well, you know, and you already know the ropes, so just need a little busier.
Taking public comment next. No, good questions. That cloud was awesome. Yeah, we're gonna figure out how to account for that. Because it's a question that a lot of my customers don't. Yeah, we might have to.
Yeah, I'm glad Debbie asked that because I was missing that.
Yeah, and if they determine a capital asset, they can capitalize and appreciate it just like anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Physically.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, it's just ridiculous amount of money.
Well, engineering.
Well, we only use the same.
Honestly, there was a big.
True story.
At least for
We need to
government,
go out and shopping.
de minimis, they're not gonna capitalize those email accounts that we have. Because essentially that is a.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that was, if you don't know.
Well,
Unless the lease is structured in such a way that we got some form of ownership between.
do you kind of have ownership of the space on the server until we have to move it. Hopefully we never have to move it.
If happens, are we leasing them or do we purchase them?
We lease them.
Do we capitalize those?
We don't because they fall under the threshold where they're considered immaterial for the lease.
So we take them lease them.
Yeah, but we could. We just did a new copier lease.
Technology these days, I mean, most kids.
Last calendar year, so I think it might have to redetermine that. Essentially have a new lease. What's that? That Gatsby came into effect at the end of our last copier lease, so what was left of it was immaterial. It said, don't bother capitalizing that. But this one's new, I'll probably have to do this one else.
I'm definitely curious about the phone system as well.
Phone system, we need to go to IP. Well, we have a server downstairs that no longer. And NEC's.
So did she retire or she?
They were like awesome, and now they're, right? We need to go to a cloud service. We've been talking to about 4 or 5 people who have different options and trying to figure it out. It's crazy. I guess Microsoft Teams has a phone system if you want to.
They absolutely. I've moved a lot of customers.
Okay.
Okay.
Finally got my ethics.
Thousands, so I like hearing that. The only thing in that 20,000, and it was just a ballpark, is like, we're gonna have to buy some physical, like handheld, or physical landlines, or lines. Because people are just accustomed to that. Not everybody's gonna want to take phone calls on their computer.
Teams you can take it on your smartphone.
By the transient time now. It's crazy.
Super awesome.
It is.
Definitely. Based on the.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, we not even did that mark. A lot of times our budgets are, a lot of times are not to exceed. What's that?
It was 19.
Letter of education.
Yeah.
So CIS.
Yeah.
So Teams is $6.50 on top of your existing licensing per person. Per person, that's
And they
per
have
month.
they can go anywhere they want to go. So if it were like, yeah, earthquake, we could get the same call.
It's done. It's done. He's
We could just have somebody at home.
So.
No problem.
As long as the
Get us
towers are.
And the towers are still operating.
Yeah, if they're standing.
But not even just towers, you can use anything. They'll use whatever network connectivity is available.
The question will be, what network capability will be left after the.
Well, history shows that if the towers are down and everything else is down.
This is true, however, T-Mobile has Starlink, and I
Yeah.
already have that on my phone, and you can get out just by being outside.
Yeah, I have a cellular backup and it switches, I think, between, so it's through Spectrum. I think it switches between AT&T and
Mine's Charter, DFN, Starlink, and T-Mobile.
Okay.
So we'll find
It's pretty cool.
we'll find whatever.
You set up which ISP is what you want,
Okay.
and then there are just backups.
Okay.
Spencer, have you met?
Just, at the door and at the, yeah, and up here.
And he did say, he's like, yeah, don't try.
Yeah. Yeah, and I forget too.
Super happy with all the work you do. And her too, oh my gosh.
And you come over and list
those
the
grants.
capitalizing cloud assets, because I was like, I've never given it any thought, and it has no relevance to me, but it's interesting.
Yeah, so for tax purposes, it's just expensive, right? I
Sections I
mean,
already know, well, that's good. you know.
it's an expense.
That's what we're
Yeah.
here
Unless they make you capitalize, but.
Well, it's kind of interesting philosophically, because if on the consumer end, you get to capitalize the asset, does the actual service provider,
Some of them are getting addressed.
you know, I'm sure they're capitalizing the physical asset.
Some of our issues.
So
Yeah.
how does that work?
Really, we're set pretty good for water.
That's kind of my thought too.
Yeah.
How many times, who all's gonna capitalize the same assets? So.
Yeah.
We're not the only little city that's terrible.
I'm not surprised though. I remember in accounting classes, it was a huge contention of, oh, we're not gonna purchase it, we'll just pay it over time in these leases, and like, I think that got the accounting world kind of fired up.
Well, that's when we had the Gatsby thing on leases
I hope it goes.
67 or something.
It goes to 68.
68.
Oh, it is.
Every time someone asks these questions, then it makes Gatsby think,
So many entities that.
oh yeah, we should be doing something with that.
Yeah, and it's funny.
Get a whole laundry list of things you have to do.
For years, they had this test of if your lease payments don't exceed 90%
They're part
of the asset's value, you don't have to capitalize it. And lo and behold, all of them would like come right at 89%
All the cities and entities.
of the value
are gonna sell too,
of
right?
the asset, but it was just a lease, so you just expense it as you go. And
Yeah.
For their size.
I prefer that.
So.
Yeah.
their council
Makes it a lot
also
easier to
looking at
account for
just
rather than
costs
trying to
more money.
capitalize it and depreciate it over time.
Lifespan of our.
Theoretically, it's the same thing, right? I mean, you're taking the expense for the year of what it would cost you each year, your depreciation for your lease payments.
Obviously.
That's one of the things that just gets me pretty wound up every October is personal property tax.
She hasn't been on the app before, but she's.
Where you gotta pay taxes under $500,000 living package and
So she is the chair.
$10,000 in property tax bills, personal property tax bills.
And even taxes on fairly small things.
Yeah.
As long as you get over that threshold.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what, guess what, I haven't bought anything over $2,000 or whatever, you know, whatever the.
So what business do you have?
I have the Dairy Queen here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you for not only your food, but for contributing to the tax rolls
Yeah.
in the city.
Yeah, no, that's the only one that gets me, is just kind of like property taxes, or personal property tax as a concept where it's like, you know, you earn money, pay taxes on money, and then you invest the money in equipment that you pay taxes
Yeah.
on and depreciate, but, you know.
I've been staying at the hotel there, so I have taken advantage of the Dairy Queen.
Good,
a few
good,
nights.
yeah. I'm trying to get everything all prepped and ready for this weekend. I had a skid steer with a mower deck rented for tomorrow, but whoever rented it before just annihilated the mower deck, so now I gotta get a brush hog. It's powered, but I can walk behind, and so
I don't think so.
see me out there trying not to get poison oak tomorrow.
Is there poison oak back there?
There wasn't until, actually last year when I rented a brush hog and I mowed everything down, and all of a sudden I had poison oak popping up. Or it might have been when I had to rent a mini excavator for cleanup after the storm.
How far back does your property go?
So it runs basically the pond between my property and the other side, like it
So
it
part of
goes
our
from
conversion
Cloverdale to Melton, basically right down the
We
road.
discovered that.
So it's two
whoever set
parcels
up
there, but
Our
yeah.
email accounts.
So it's like, I have
Set us up on our.
probably an acre and a quarter to mow. It's like 2.8 altogether.
And so our
something like that.
email could be offshore.
Is that location, how long have you been
So we had
there?
to switch.
We built it in 2014.
We're gonna have to change our.
It's been a good location
Forward
for you?
our
Yeah,
existing ones.
yeah.
You'll
So I'm
see
actually
things
third
dotted
generation
with
myself. My
Creswell bar
parents, they have had the store in Florence since it was built in 1978.
Oh, okay.
And then I purchased that from
Now, did
just
Dairy
recently.
Queen close in
Yeah,
Florence?
It burned down back in
Burned down, okay.
2021.
Okay.
And it took us a good 3 years to get it rebuilt.
Do you own that one?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there
the
was,
cost of not doing it would have been.
I heard from a number of people that was very disappointed as they were going
Yeah.
to Florence. And,
Man, I have dealing with the city of Florence over there is just, it's an interesting animal.
So you.
so it was a
We should
struggle to
be on
get
a
it rebuilt.
Yeah, it really was.
So,
Everybody
yeah,
kind
not
of
too-
runs their own department, like it's their own little
Too happy
kingdom, and they all
Okay.
just,
That's the case.
you know, regardless of what code is, they say, well, you need
So we're
this, and
taking
we
this
won't
opportunity to get it done.
issue your occupancy permit
You also
until you
need
satisfy
US
this condition.
support.
It's like, that's not code. We
Yeah,
had to put in like a
the
$100,000
phone thing, that's cool, that's good to know that.
rain garden, just
For
to,
stormwater?
yeah, to get it, for stormwater treatment, because they couldn't locate where the original plans are with the original stormwater plan.
So
And
because
so
they're
it's
already
like,
using their licensing.
well, I don't know what to tell you, so, but
An uplift.
it wasn't, again, it wasn't code, but they held our occupancy
Have
on it
teams.
until we got to put it
I
in.
love
So
teams
it's like-
being integrated so that when I make a Teams meeting, it's on
Okay,
my.
but that property's
on top of that,
so when did you
those things
open
will pop up
the new?
on
August.
August.
Yeah, beginning of
Because
August.
it's all part of the
Same location?
ecosystem, so you can see who's on the phone with
Yeah, it was
who.
down there
on
for
what number actively while that's
a
happening.
little while,
when it's
but,
done, it'll show
yeah,
up on the
yeah.
calendar as a
Live
call
in
out to
Newport,
this number
so-
for that period
Yeah.
of time.
And,
So you can even track that.
Can you still port your phone numbers over?
Right, yeah, that's, I always forget that Newport doesn't have one.
But then you
Yeah.
could check.
You gotta go half an hour in any direction, so, well, Toledo's not that
It's
far.
not that far.
But you
no,
can do
it's
all
about
four.
a
10
10
minutes,
minute,
yeah.
10-minute drive to
They call the current
to
number.
Dairy Queen in Toledo.
Yeah. So, yep, it's keeping me busy.
Yeah,
Good.
totally.
Got too many
And we're more than happy to
employees.
jump
Do you have
in.
other stores then besides these?
Yeah.
two?
Just those
Whatever
two,
it
yeah,
is.
for now.
This is an advisory.
My long-term plan is to try and pick
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, my partner who did a great job with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dairy Queen as a franchise is going strong then?
He does do.
Yeah, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, we have our own, we call it, it's a territory operator license, contract within Dairy Queen.
I think on it, I mean,
And so we're an owner co-op, most of the stores in Oregon and Washington.
I don't think so, right?
And so we have a different fee structure
Okay.
and we get to